So, I just want to say hello again. Thank you so much for your continued support. And to do gumbo for the Gigal menu is a pretty cool thing. Thinking about French wines and gumbo having origins of French, German, native, Caribbean. So it's just a really cool way of thinking about food as a whole melting pot for me. That's the way I really love to think about food is globally, not just from one thing. So for us to do this, it's super exciting because this dish has a lot of complexity in it. It's because of the ingredients and the spices that go with it. And that's the part that I really enjoy cooking this dish, is because it's such a simple dish, but all the things when it comes together makes it so special. So I just kind of want to go over these ingredients with you really quickly. We have a ½ pound of the Holy Trinity, which is celery and onions and bell peppers, a little bit of chopped garlic, and a bay leaf. We have a ½ pound of smoked chicken. So this chicken is going to be brined first here, and then what we're going to be doing is we're going to be hot smoking it, so it's going to get that nice smoky umami flavor on there. And then we have the andouille sausage, something that we're making here at the restaurant. We're going to be roasting it first along with the chicken so that it's completely cooked, so we can take that aspect and element out of the cooking part, so we can just really focus on the fun part of it. Next we have a roux. So roux is equal parts fat and equal parts flour. In this one we're using blended oil and flour, and you can notice the color of it because what's going to happen is what we're going to do is we're going to start this oil off at a super high temperature. We're going to add the flour into it and continue to stir it into that hot pan and oil, and it's going to come to this color. When it gets to this color, this like milk chocolate color, the aroma, the flavors that come out of it, this is the secret weapon of gumbo. It's because it has that I don't want to say charred, but that caramelization, and then also it's just almost like a peanut butter kind of consistency. So it's a very cool ingredient. And then we have the roasted chicken stock. This is roasted chicken stock that we're making here at the restaurant. We're going to first take the bones, we're going to roast them, get some nice color on them, and then we're going to make a stock out of it. Once that stock is ready, what we're going to be doing is we're going to add the spices to it. So everybody's going to be getting the stock with the spices in it. Spices being like cardamom, cinnamon, mace, nutmeg, dried herbs like sage and thyme, bay leaf skin, paprika, cayenne, so on. Very flavorful broth, and that's another one of the secret weapons of this dish, is that the broth itself, or gumbo itself, is like a soup base consistency, but the broth itself is highly seasoned, and that's what makes it so much fun, not only to cook, but on the palate as you're eating it as well. So what we'll do is we're going to start with these vegetables, and we're going to cook them, the Holy Trinity. We're going to start cooking that and getting some color on that and kind of just melting in the pan, starting with some warm oil. So we'll start now. So with the next step is cooking, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking for a pot that is minimum about 4 quarts. What this is going to allow us to do is that it's going to have the stew inside of there, and it's going to have a side, so when you're stirring it or whisking it, that it's not going to be going over the side. So minimum 4 quarts and kind of high sides. We're going to start off with about 3 tablespoons of cooking oil, not extra virgin, just a regular like vegetable oil, anything like that. It's going to be getting the pan, I'm trying to get nice and warm. Immediately you can see this like a nice little smoke point that's coming up, so the pan's ready to go. So I'm going to remove the pan off the heat. Just gently put the vegetables in there. I don't want any oil to splash up in my hand or anything like that. We're just going to kind of stir it with a wooden spoon now. So I'm going to start the pan off at a pretty warm temperature. But once I put the vegetables in, it's been about maybe 30 seconds to a minute. I'm going to lower the heat now. Just trying to keep that temperature nice and able to caramelize my vegetables. as this is kind of melting and sauteing, I kind of want to talk about the tools that you're going to need for this. You're going to need a wooden spoon, something that I like to use wood as I'm stirring, just so it's not scraping the bottom of the pan or whatnot. It's something that I'm really not looking forward to. Also, a whisk. The whisk is going to be coming when we're going to be adding the roux to it, so that as the stock is boiling, we're going to be whisking that roux into it, and so it can kind of just thicken the sauce. Also, most importantly, tasting spoons. So I have a mug here of spoons that are clean, and then I have a mug here for my spoons that are dirty. And what I really recommend is, as you're cooking this process, that you're tasting as you're going through this. It's really important because you can see the dish itself is going to be, as you are adding every ingredient, it's going to be changing in flavor, in its complexity, and its levels. And so it's really important to go through this. This is one of my favorite parts about cooking, is as I'm cooking, as I'm tasting, and you can see things evolve real time. And it's fun because I can store that information away, and now as I'm cooking this dish next time, I can do something different, I can adjust. It's always evolving, and that's the fun part about tasting through every step. So now that you can see that the vegetables are pretty much nice and melted now, what we're going to do is we're going to start adding the protein to it. So we're going to add the sausage, the andouille sausage, and then what we're going to do is we're going to add the smoked chicken breast. So, since it's already cooked, we're going to be sauteing and caramelizing the vegetables first, and then adding the protein second. Traditionally, when I'm here at the restaurant, what I'll do is I'll start with the raw protein, the chicken and the sausage, and I'll start cooking those ingredients first. And what happens is that when I start with the proteins in a hot pan with oil, and I cook it, it's going to be leaving flavor into there and on the bottom of it, nice caramelization called fond. And fond is a very important thing, is because what happens is that it's a nice dark caramelization of the protein that's on the bottom of it. And when I remove the protein before I add the vegetables, I'm going to add a little bit of liquid and kind of scrape all that off. It's really important because those are the morsels of flavor. That's the foundation of the dish itself. And so, since we're cooking the proteins for everybody in advance, we're starting with the vegetables first, and we're going to add the cooked protein second. That does not mean that there's not going to be fond on the bottom of this. There still will be. It's just going to be a different type of fond, more from the vegetables and whatnot. If you can see here, it's here on the bottom of the pan, and that's all good stuff. That's stuff what we're looking for. So we're right on track. What we're going to do is we're going to stir this for a few minutes and let the natural oils of the protein come out and meld with the vegetables. If you notice, I'm on a medium heat, so there's, in this dish, the color black in the pan is not a good color, and in many dishes it's not. And because what happens is that the color black, it means that it went too far, and things start getting bitter, and that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for that couple steps right before that dark caramelization, because this dish is all about dark caramelization, those brown, earthy, savory colors or flavors that we're looking for. So I just want to kind of give you that point, is that, you start seeing anything that's starting to turn black or whatnot, it's okay to back off the heat a little bit. Right now, time is of the essence, and this is not a dish that we're going to be rushing or anything like that. In total, this dish will take maybe about 25 to 30 minutes. So it's not that long taking a cooking dish. Okay, so at this point, I'm just going to give my stock here, my roasted chicken stock with the spices. I'm going to give it a stir so that all the spices are evenly distributed through the liquid. And I'm kind of make a hole here in the middle. I'm going to push all the vegetables and the protein out, and so the middle of it is just going to be the bottom of the pan. You can see that nice caramelization here. We'll pour a little bit of the liquid. Okay, and you can see that it's just coming off the bottom. And that's another reason why I'm using a wooden spoon, is the wooden spoon is not going to be actually scraping against the metal. It's going to just be gliding over it, but it's enough to get that fond off the bottom. This is really important when you're cooking with things, is that you just want only the flavor, and you don't want to get any of that metal kind of scraping or anything like that in there. So you can see it's all nice and clear on the bottom now. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the liquid to it. Okay. So now that the liquid's in there, I'm going to go from a medium heat, and I'm going to go pretty much to like a medium-high heat. And what we're trying to do is we're going to be standing here, and with our spoon, we're going to be ready and kind of constantly stirring it until it comes up to a boil. Right before it comes to a boil, and right as it comes to a boil, we're going to be ready, and we're going to lower the heat down to like a medium simmer. And when that happens, that's when we're going to be adding our roux. In the meantime, it's a great time to have a glass of wine, but don't get too far away from the pot, because this is when things can happen for the worst. So you want to stick around, have your spoon, and just continue to stir. Okay, so I'd say about 10 minutes have passed, and right when I added the liquid, I tasted it. And then now, what I did is at high heat, I brought it up to a boil. Right now, I just lowered it, and so we're at like this nice, pleasant simmer. This is really important that it's at this temperature, because once we add this roux, it's going to change the dynamic of this broth. And so right now, it's a broth, it's very fluid. But once we add this roux, it's going to thicken it up. And that's when things start sticking into the bottom of the pan, and that's when things start burning. And that's what we're trying to really avoid. So having the whisk available right here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of stir it and kind of look at it, you know, and see how thin it is and how thick it's not. So that's really good, because what I want to see is just like tasting in between. I also want to look at it and see how far it's come after I add the roux, and how thick it's got. So kind of want to talk about seasoning as we're doing this right now. Right now, there's a few of the ingredients that we use in our spice blend already has salt in it. And I want to talk about like not putting enough salt and not using too much salt. It's kind of got to be right there in the middle. And that's the reason why I have the spoons here, so that I can continuously taste it, and I'm still adjusting as the dish is happening. So it's a good time now, kind of tasting it. We haven't added any salt yet, so tasting it and seeing where the salt's at. The recipe that we have here, it's pretty good. But once we add this amount of fat and flour, it's going to really change it. This will absorb a lot of the salt that's in there. And so it's good to taste now before we add the roux. It's good to taste it once the roux is incorporated into it, and then it's good to taste it right before you think you're going to serve it, and then at that point you can adjust. So for me, cooking, you always have to be involved in what you're doing, because these flavors are evolving, and you have to evolve with it, because if you're doing something else and you're not tasting this stuff, at the end result, it's a big problem, or it could be not a good problem at all. So tasting is extremely important. I cannot stress that enough. Okay, so we're going to give it a little stir. Just want to look at how it's looking right now, and then we're going to be adding the roux to it. Go ahead and add the whole container of this. Everything's been measured out. You want to hurry up and kind of get it in there. Use the side of it. And then you just want to stir it gently. You don't have to whisk it vigorously or anything like that. You're just stirring it. You just don't want it to get stuck on the bottom or anything like that. Don't forget to get into the sides of this as well, into that 90-degree turn of the pot from the side to the flat part. It's important. And then you're just stirring it. You can almost see immediately how the texture of the liquid has completely changed now. It's a little bit thicker now. What we're going to do is we're going to kind of keep it at that same heat, and we're just going to let this cook for a few more minutes. Okay? So now is a good time to be tasting the roux. Looking at the texture of it, yeah, looks good. You know, on the back of the spoon, it's nice and coating, so this is great. We're on a good path here. Okay, kind of looking at it before you're tasting it. Just be careful. It is a little warm. Great. All the flavors are there. Texture's coming along. Yeah, it's great. Right now, the kitchen should be just like, your whole house should just be extremely smelling like gumbo and remind you of the New Orleans area, because this is just, wow, it's pretty crazy. Even in the kitchen, you can smell this here at the wine bowl. All right. So, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a small amount of salt here. Just kind of kick it up a little bit. Stir that in. You can see already, it's only been about a minute, and the texture of the liquid itself is nice and thick. Okay, so this is the fun part about this this dish, is because the roux completely changes the dynamic of it, adds more flavor, more complexity to it, but also what it does is that it thickens it so that when you do put it into the bowl, that it's not just a broth. It makes it a lot more rich, and that's the reason why we're going to be serving it with rice. The rice is really kind of a vessel, is to get all the liquid in the, of the gumbo so that you can eat it. Because if not, it's just kind of a broth and it's kind of light. The rice is just kind of a neutral flavor, and it's the conveyor of whatever's left in that gumbo. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be serving with a scoop of rice. I suggest putting the gumbo down first and the rice in one section of it. So that when you plate it, or when you're eating it, you can control how much rice and how much gumbo you're taking in on each spoonful. That's a fun part, because with less rice, it's full flavor. With more, it's a little bit muted. So it's a fun way to eat it. And as you can tell, obviously, as we're going through this and also eating it, there's a lot of ways to adjust and change flavors and whatnot. So when this dish is done cooking, it's still not over. As much rice as you put on that spoon is still going to adjust the flavor. That's the part that I like, is just always experimenting with these flavors. So once we added the roux and the stock was thickening, what we did is we put it on for about 5 to 6 minutes at that low heat. It's really important that it continues to cook for about 5 to 6 minutes after that, is because what you want is all those flavors to come together. If, the flour and the broth itself come together and make that nice thick gumbo texture. It's really important for that 5 or 6 minutes. Once that's done, you've tasted it, let's give it one last final taste just to make sure before we plate it. Once you've tasted it and it's where it needs to be, you can move on with the next portion of it. You're ready to plate. So we have the rice here. The rice you can warm up 2 different ways. You can either microwave it, you can put it into a sauce pot with a little bit of water, maybe like 3 tablespoons and a lid, and just go at the lowest temperature that you can. And it should just kind of steam and just get nice and fluffy again. I personally like to serve gumbo, getting the chicken and the sausage for the first scoop, and then the second scoop is more of the broth. Okay? Once the gumbo's in there, what you can do is just put your rice on the side, and this is going to allow you to put on as much rice as you'd like, or no rice at all. A little bit of garnish, and that's it. I hope that everybody enjoys our recipe here of gumbo. It's been a fun way to learn about it. Chris and Mary were so generous to send myself out to New Orleans and be able to train with some of the folks down there. And it's definitely a true American cuisine. They're doing some wonderful food down there. I can't wait to go back. I always long to go taste those flavors again. So everybody, cheers, and thank you very much.